All right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to Agile DevOps DFW, the last session of 2020. As many of you know, this is the Barnes & Noble in Addison, Tollway and Beltline, where Victor, Fred, and I cooked up Agile DevOps 2014, October. Mike just told me that this is when the Texas Rangers lost. So maybe this is not a good, this is not a good image to have for a meetup that is based in Texas. So I apologize. I will try and find something else that happened in 2014, which was not as traumatic to people of Texas. But for now, this is the best I got. All right. So we created this group to explore intersection of Agile and DevOps. I got to fix it. This is a bug. Going forward, we are going to have our mid-month event on at noon Central, like today. And I would love having more technical speakers. So if you have a technical topic or you know a technical speaker, let me know. I'd love to have more of them in our at our meetup. All right. Lots of questions about where do I get access to the recording. So I saw in the meetup group, lots of people said, "Hey, I'm sorry, I can't make it. Can I access the recording?" The answer is yes. We have a Smooth Apps channel on YouTube, and Janie has been very kind and diligent, and then she uploads all the videos to YouTube, and then for quick access, she adds them to the playlist called webinars. So you can always check out our webinars on the YouTube channel, right? Agile for Patriots, cause dear to our heart. One of our board members, Red, is on this on the webinar. Adrian is on this webinar, actually two of our board members, and Mike is one of our graduates. So this is a cause that's very dear to our heart. I think we've made a positive impact on at least 42 families as a way of giving back for all that they have done for our country. How can you help? We have graduate speaker sessions. So every other Friday from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, we have a speaker talk to our graduates. So you could just show up. You don't have to be prepared. If you have the right kind of background, you can help our graduates. You can just have an Ask Me Anything session. In fact, we have one tomorrow. You can do a 5 to 7 minute lightning talk. You can do a longer presentation if you want. You can offer internships in your company, consider our graduates for job opportunities, or you can donate. So if you go to agileforpatriots.org, there's a donate menu item, and we'll be grateful for any donations that you can share. All right. Let's talk about Smooth Apps. My company, we've got partnerships with Scrum.org trainers across the world. I think there are now 340 Scrum.org trainers. So chances are, if you have a geographically distributed company, you want agile training, coaching, consulting that is consistent and compatible and cohesive, chances are we can build a team for you and take care of your needs no matter where your teams might be. At Smooth Apps, this is just a sample of some of the ways in which we help our clients. We help with executive alignment. We help with product ownership, product alignment. We help with Scrum Team alignment. And finally, we offer bundles where we can help guide your organization on the path to agility. Okay. If you don't have money, but you still want to learn, our ideas resonate with you, that's okay. You can check out our blogs, watch our videos on YouTube, check out our free presentations, watch our webinars. Of course, I'd love to have you here at this meetup, and follow us on LinkedIn. Jenny is doing a fantastic job with posting great content like motivational quotes, and then also letting people know about upcoming events and recordings from past events, right? So lots of ways we can make a difference to your life, even if you don't have budget. All right, logistics. So everybody's going to be in listen only mode. You can hear my dog whining in the background. Give me 1 second. There's some uncertainty I'm experiencing. Let me handle it. Hang on. All right, I have a very conflicted dog. She can't make up her mind whether she wants to be with me or without me. So she keeps going in and out. All right. I'll be monitoring the chat session, the Q&A panel, or sorry, the chat panel and Q&A panel. Mike's going to be asking you at least 6 questions during the course of this webinar to talk about your experience with the 6 kinds of challenges that he and his team faced and overcame. So be prepared. You can use the Q&A panel or the chat panel to share your thoughts with Mike. We'll answer as many questions as we can along the way. Time permitting, those that could not get answered along the way, we'll handle as many of them as possible offline. At the end of the session, and then the rest, maybe you can, I would love for you to start a conversation with Mike on LinkedIn, and then Mike and I can chime in and share our thoughts, right? Okay, so with that, let me tell you a little bit about the topic and the speaker. So Mike's going to tell you real-world stories from his real-world Scrum team about 6 kinds of challenges or 6 categories of challenges that impacted their team's ability to make reliable forecasts and what specific techniques Mike's team used to overcome them. Just a word of caution, just remember we're dealing with complex adaptive systems, so please resist the temptation to just blindly copy paste what Mike did and Mike's team did to your context. Try and understand the guiding principles and values, try to understand the context that Mike's team was inside of, and then try to adapt those ideas to your context or use those ideas as a way to discover new insights that make sense in your context, all right? So let's talk about Mike. So I think I met Mike 2 years. Mike, has it been 2 years? Was it Jan?
Almost. Yeah, January will be 2 years.
So just look at the amount of certifications Mike has got in a 2-year period. And I'm trying to catch up with him. But this is one thing that makes Mike unique. I think maybe barring 1 or 2 certificates, he may have the entire suite of certification from scrum.org. And I think this shows his commitment to continuous learning and improvement. Mike is a US Navy veteran, so I thank you from the bottom of my heart, Mike, for everything you did to keep us safe and free. And he's got a whole bunch of other certifications. And then besides theoretical knowledge, Mike has got some very visible scars from the School of Hard Knocks. So it's not that he just read a bunch of books, passed a bunch of exams. He's actually lived through the challenges of being on a Scrum team in a very high pressure, high visibility atmosphere. So just to give you context, the company that Mike was working with had a very high profile release where they were migrating pretty much their entire product stack into a new tech stack. The entire platform was being migrated. It was being monitored by the C-suite and by the board of directors. So it was a very high pressure environment. It was a multi-year program trying to pay off maybe 15 to 20 years of accumulated technical debt. And it was in this context that forecasting becomes extremely important because it has an impact on the lives of lots of people and it has extremely high visibility. So that was the context in which Mike found himself as a first-time Scrum Master about 18 months ago. And what Mike is going to do today is to walk you through the journey by explaining 6 major categories of forecasting challenges and what his team did to overcome them and what actually happened. So with that, Mike, I want to hand over to you. Welcome. I will stop sharing. Please start sharing and the ball is yours.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. Thanks for letting me be here today. Thanks, Ravi, for having me. Let's see. All right. So as Ravi mentioned, I've been with my present company for about 1.5 years. And we had another Agile for Patriots graduate who was the Scrum Master of the team just before me. So we did a transition there and kept going. And as you all know, in agility and with Scrum, we want to continually adapt and get better. And so, you know, we had some challenges, as was mentioned. We had about 6 improvement ideas that we implemented over the 18 months that I've been there. So the first challenge that we had is, say you've seen ineffectiveness in your sprint and you attribute it to poor sprint planning. What's what are some things you may have done or asked at that point?
All right. So I will give you approximately 60 seconds. Don't overthink it. Stream of consciousness. What is the biggest challenge you have seen in sprint planning that causes unreliable forecasts? All right, I'm starting to see some answers coming in. By the way, we have our friend Albert from Nigeria. Welcome. Welcome, Alberto. Sorry. All right. Mark is here. So Mark is saying items are too big, too much uncertainty. Adrian, not having needed specialist subject matter experts at planning, not enough complete PBI. Maybe by complete, Sheikh, you might mean maybe not sprint ready product backlog items, ineffective backlog refinement, that's from Red, and constant mid-sprint emergencies. So great answers.
Yeah, very good.
Mike, back to you.
Yeah, and those are some of the things that we saw as well. And so what we did in order, we faced, a lack of clarity on the sprint goal sometimes. We were guilty of not having the product owner come in with a starter sprint goal so that we sort of aligned around it. PBIs didn't seem to support the sprint goal. Sometimes it was just a hodgepodge of things. Well, we just need to get these done. Well, then how do we make a sprint goal? Well, it shouldn't be that way. It should be a sprint goal supported by the PBIs. So we were guilty occasionally of coming out of the sprint planning without formalizing the sprint goal. Maybe we did have a rough one, but we didn't finalize it. And then without that guiding North Star, we just were adrift without our instruments, without, the direction and the way to see where we are and to navigate. So what we did is we started working on a sprint planning overview for our Confluence Agile Wiki page. It outlined the responsibilities of each team member before the sprint, during the sprint, after sprint, or I should say planning, not just sprint, but what are the things we need to do to come into the sprint ready and planning ready? And that would be, better estimation, better stories, good refinement. Maybe even, we're implementing something new even now where we review, have a review or a design session, I should say, to look at the things that we have, look back at what we did, look at what we learned, and how do we want to look at these things, and are they refined well enough? And then during planning, your normal things of looking at your capacity, planning for vacations, holidays. We just have an exhaustive checklist. And so we read through it with the entire team to start with the overall view on Confluence. And then we have a smaller checklist at each sprint planning. We just go down this list and we execute everything so that we don't leave unprepared. And so basically now our team members know what their responsibilities are. The PO comes in now with a starter sprint goal. I mean, she's been really good about having the product backlog ordered, but now we can see a little more of a pattern of what kind of value we're going to deliver to our stakeholders. We've gotten really good now of keeping our product backlog refined to a level that supports, 2 sprints ahead. Sometimes that fluctuates based on the work that we do, but we forge ahead and getting that done. And then that supports our sprint planning so that we have good PBIs for the sprint. We take into consideration all the stakeholders' feedback from the review, and we talk about those things in sprint planning. We do all our forecast, capacity, planning, and then we do a fist of 5. We talk about anything that the team may have that would prohibit them from having a high vote of confidence for completing the sprint forecast. And then with that sprint goal, that's what we use to be the navigation tool for us to drive through the sprint and deliver value to our stakeholders.
Very good. Mike, would it be okay if I shared some questions and comments that came in?
Sure.
On this topic. So a couple of comments I apologize I didn't see from Prashad in terms of challenges to forecasting in sprint planning was lack of understanding of the PBIs and dependencies. So I think, I don't know if you mentioned those or not. If you didn't, do you have any, or if you're handling them later on in the presentation, we can wait at that point.
It ties in a little bit to something a little bit later in the presentation, but I think we've gotten more visibility based on some other tools. I'll mention one here a little bit later, but we do definitely learn from our retrospectives, and toward the end of the nature of our product had us in dark prod for most of the life of the product until we had to coordinate with 2 other teams to push our 3 pieces of the product into production at the same time. So we had lessons learned along the way. And I said, as I was saying, there'll be another tool that we use that kind of helped us there toward the end. But I really think that some of the Scrum Masters maybe attending other people's reviews and listening and talking back and forth and having the teams really discuss things we started at chat sessions. We'd have actual bridge calls, and the teams that had the dependencies would talk and make sure we were working together and had good communication. But a lot of that we also covered in planning too, sort of the lessons learned. And, hey, in this sprint, we need to coordinate with this other team because these pieces coordinate. They may be a day ahead or a day behind or maybe a week ahead. So how can we sync this up to have the work testable and have it done by the end of the sprint? So it really came down to good communication. And I think we took it up a notch here on one of the tools that we have later.
Very good, very good. And then we've got a couple of other questions. One is from Tom. Did the sprint checklist occur during or outside of a time box? So Tom, the checklist was created outside as a Agile community of practice improvement idea. And Adrian, who is another graduate of Agile for Patriots and a board member of AFP, Adrian, Mike, and the other Scrum Master, they collaborated. Tom, can you clarify, did you mean to ask when the team uses the checklist, whether they use it inside the time box or outside, or did you mean to ask when was it created? So let's give Tom some time to answer that question or ask a clarifying question. And then Red had a comment, definition of ready for a sprint. So Red, were you saying that this checklist acted as a definition of ready for a sprint? I could see it that way. Perfect. Yes. I think it created more transparency about what were the expectations, who needs to do what by when to achieve the intent of the sprint planning. Because many of us had different interpretations of sprint planning, different levels of maturity. So we tried to crowdsource the best practices from teams that were having effective sprint planning and try to extract them and to make that wisdom available to the broader audience. All right. And Tom is saying, is the checklist prepared before the sprint planning time box commences? So Mike, when do you guys go through it? Or how do you use it before? What part of the checklist is used before sprint planning and what is used during and what is used after?
There's a more general Confluence page that we use that outlines more, it's more educational because not a lot of our developers, even if they've been exposed to agility and Scrum, it may still be relatively new to them. So there's a more expansive list that we used outside of the sprint planning to show them, hey, this is what's expected. These are the responsibilities you have as a developer or as a product owner. And we do have different business subject matter experts and business analysts, and we have some, a technical project manager. We have all these people that, there could be delegation, but at the end of the day, we all have responsibilities. So there's a bigger list that we went through outside of sprint planning, or maybe just to introduce it in the first time that we started using it. But then beyond that, once they had that education, what we started using was a more abbreviated, just, a checklist of this is what you're doing during the planning. And it's expected that anything that we needed to do before to be ready, that we were already handling that, like refinement, starter, sprint goal. So going through our checklist in planning just kind of keeps us on track in that segment of planning where we want to be and what we should be accomplishing. And it, the pre and the post, that part is just assumed that since we've already gone over it, then we know what our responsibilities are.
Got it. Very good. All right. Great job. Thank you, Mike. Okay, let's move on.
Okay. So then a second challenge we've come across in the past 18 months. So you've gotten to the end of a sprint and you see a tidal wave of developed PBIs now being transitioned to testing. What are some things that you've done and asked about that?
All right. So it's like a mini waterfall inside of a sprint, on the 9th day or the 10th day, life is a living hell for whoever has the misfortune of being tagged as a testing specialist. So have you guys seen this? And how has it impacted forecasting? What have you tried? We take a few answers. All right. So Red has a great answer. Work one PBI at a time as a team. So create WIP limits. And I think Mike might have something lined up in terms of how he used WIP limits coming up. Try to convert the team to using more test first. All right, so that's from Stephen. Very good, great thoughts. Smaller batch size. Yes, so let's optimize for flow. Very good. Okay, Mike, back to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, those I think those all tie in to what we tried. We started using some PSK disciplines and metrics. We had several, I'd say, months, or even if you go beyond my time at the organization, Ravi's been the Agile coach there the entire time. So it wasn't the first time we've asked the team to self-organize and to stop starting and start finishing. And testing was consistently, rolling over into the next sprint. And that's not what we want. We want a done increment when we go into the review. So once I took the PSK and Ravi and I talked together on some formulating here, what we decided, along with the leadership, because we do have a really mature level of leadership in the bank, we decided that the devs should be paired for ownership, not paired development. That was their choice, but paired ownership of each PBI. We put WIP limits of 1 PBI per dev pair. We asked that the effort level for PBIs, based on what my team estimates, that we don't go over 8 points. So if it went higher than that, we would look at it to see if there was a way to slice the story. We take a daily vote of confidence each day to find out what the level of confidence is for completing the forecast. We have a cumulative flow diagram that we use in the daily Scrum now to show the progress of work, so we can make adjustments as we need to. We started reading our Kanban board from right to left there in the daily Scrum, because then that would allow everyone to see from the value point backward, where are we? What have we accomplished, and what do we still have left to accomplish? And then to shorten our feedback loop, we started executing mid-sprint reviews so that we can meet with our stakeholders and get feedback faster. And so what the outcome was is our cycle time. When I got there and started sort of putting together metrics through different, Azure DevOps and pulling it into Excel and doing some calculations, we had triple-digit days, in great part because we weren't pushing to production in the early part of the project. Then once we got the team into the habit of pushing to production more regularly, as I mentioned, we were in dark prod, so we couldn't necessarily deliver value, but we can mitigate risk. So we started getting faster at that. And with this new wave of using these PSK disciplines, we were able to shorten our cycle time down to single digit. I think it was around 6 or 7 days the last time I looked at when we started this new way of work and averaged it out. So we're able to deliver value faster, mitigate the risk of inventory, and a lot more of our work, we get a lot higher to getting in the 90s to hopefully full, complete forecasts, meeting DoD and meeting our sprint goals.
Yeah, and I want to add to what Mike was saying. So Adrian did a presentation at this meetup before, and he did another version of his presentation at scrum.org last week. So I think Adrian's team in the same organization reduced cycle time using similar techniques and values from 164 days, if I'm not mistaken, to maybe 6 days. So huge measurable improvements in more than one team, and sustainable measurable improvements, not just like a flash in the pan. So huge benefits. We've got a bunch of questions and comments. One is from Alberto. What tool did you use for the CFD visualization?
Well, I'm fortunate that my Agile coach has a bunch of a gigantic scoreboard, and we were able to extract just the one that we wanted to use for cumulative flow diagram and place that on an Excel sheet. And every day I go in and update where we are in the sprint based on Azure DevOps, and then the macros behind it set that up. We do have it in Azure DevOps as well, but it's a little tricky to use because it insists on having 2 weeks or more worth of work to show, and that we want to see what's in the sprint, not what was in the previous sprint. So this Excel version works really well for us, and I believe there's another team in our organization that's also using it, and it's just a very good visual tool to use for inspection each day in the daily Scrum.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. All right. So yeah, it's a homegrown Excel. It's not very sophisticated. One of the things I learned from my mentor, Mark Norman, who taught me so much about Kanban and quality assurance, and he's on the webinar, but I'm paraphrasing, but Mark told me, all tools are evil. Some are more evil than others, right? So the tool, sometimes we used to waste so much time trying to figure out how to use Azure DevOps, and that became a barrier. So we said, you know what, let's just use Excel. It's better than nothing. So anyway, so we used Excel. All right, there's a question from Red. Can you talk a little bit about more on the daily vote of confidence? When do you have the vote of confidence? What kind of a technique do you use? How did the team respond?
So I actually had, I worked back and forth with developers. At first, what we did is take it while we were in the daily Scrum. And what happened with that was they would just place it in the chat. One of my developers actually pointed out, if we start seeing these votes pour in, then we may be influenced, because one of our goals was, if you vote below an 8, then you obviously see something the rest of the team doesn't see. What do you see, and what's an improvement idea we could use? So if everyone's voting 9 and someone wants to vote a 7, and they keep seeing all these votes come in at 9s, well, I don't want to be the 7 that has to come up with this or talk about it. So we thought about what's an anonymous way so people aren't seeing each other vote. So what I did is, in the morning, I set a calendar reminder to make sure that I did this, but I haven't usually needed to fall back on that. Every day I send an email out with voting options on it for what the vote of confidence is, and then just ask them, if you vote below 8, would you tell us what it is you see that the rest of us may not see? And then I bring it in to the daily Scrum, and I say, hey, this was the average vote of confidence, but I've noticed the trend over time. Your vote may have changed, you've dropped. So could you tell us what it is that you're concerned about? What is it you see that we may not see? And we discuss it. Or if anything happens during the day that could, change their votes, then I ask them, hey, this was your vote. Do you want to keep it that way? Or is there something you would change now, knowing what you know from today? And we just have that conversation, but it allows them to vote without being influenced by the others. And then it gives us that conversation point during the daily Scrum. And our daily Scrum is at the end of the day. So that's a good day for us to see what's happened for the day and then make our adjustments.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. And one of the techniques that we are using is something I learned from one of my Scrum.org professional Scrum trainer colleagues, Ralph Jochum. He did a webinar, which is on YouTube, where he was talking about using the core protocols in Scrum. And one of the core protocols is the perfection game. So the way that works is, whatever you're being inspected, you rate it on a scale of 0 to 10. So if someone is looking at the sprint forecast, the vote of confidence really is a perfection score on the likelihood that we will meet the sprint forecast. And what we are trying to tell people is, first Mike is trying to create safety for providing a lower score, even if you are going against the collective wisdom or let's say the consensus of the team. So psychological safety is important. The second thing that's important is to tell people, for every point below 10, do you have a constructive suggestion on what course correction we can make to raise the likelihood of meeting the forecast? What improvements do you recommend? That way people can't just come in and, like a seagull, come in, crap all over the sprint forecast and then fly off, right? That's a seagull school of management. You don't get to do that, right? You've got to say, how can we make it better? What is your intuition telling you? All right. I hope that answers the question, Red. Mike, back to you.
Okay. So a third challenge that we've seen, let's say you're at the end of sprint planning, the team has a low level of confidence for the sprint forecast. What are some of the things that you've either observed, done, or asked?
All right. Sprint planning is getting over, not getting the warm and fuzzy from the team. What do we do? I'm assuming people are thinking or clipping their toenails. Or maybe nobody's seen this happen. All right, Mike.
Okay.
No answers. Let's move on.
Okay.
Oh, William, sorry. Red says, let's just talk. Let's find adjustments. Stephen is saying, try to identify the issues. What is causing low confidence? Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Red. Mike, back to you.
Yep. That ties right in with what I was going to say. We did talk. We asked. What we found out was there was some work coming up that the team didn't know how to do. We had silos of knowledge on the team. For instance, one person being really strong at back end and the team allowing that person to handle it all. And then the person found another opportunity at another organization. And when he left, he took that wealth of knowledge with him. So what the team was pointing out is we had a lot of stories that we had to do based on what our product owner felt was the next slice of value that we needed to provide for our stakeholders. So they didn't feel confident because they didn't know how much effort it was going to take to do these stories that they really hadn't worked on before. So that really crippled the team. What we ended up doing is based on that painful lesson, we got together and had a meeting and we started thinking about all the single points of failure that we could incur, like who on this team knows something that the rest of the team doesn't know. Or if it was in this instance, there were still some peers on different teams that were really strong on the back end. So what we did was ask them if they could provide training for us. So we'd have in the sprint, we'd have office hours with these peers so that they would help us out and they would know that, hey, I'm giving myself to you at this point, but to avoid massive context switching, let's stick to these office hours. And then the rest of the time I can do the work for my team. So they were gracious in doing that. And then what we said is don't just go have those office hours with them and don't just have the training with them, record all this. And what we'll do is put it in a repository for our team. And if it's applicable to other teams, then we'll make it more available, like on a lunch and learn page. But let's make this available so that we can go back and watch the recordings instead of just consistently going back to this other person and making them context switch. So we put that on our knowledge transfer page. And then an additional thing that we did that's in the same vein is, Scrum Masters, architects, different support teams, developers, everyone has a wealth of knowledge in maybe their specific area. It could be, maybe they're really good also in agility. We don't limit it, but we implemented lunch and learns so that we could share this knowledge. I got it started, pretty close to when I got there, and developers don't have to be coerced too much when you got pizza hanging there on the line. So they showed up, obviously before COVID started, they showed up for pizza and then they would learn and they would engage and interact. And before long, instead of us just having one lunch and learn per month, it grew to where we had a line of people waiting to contribute to it. And it didn't even stop once COVID started. Once we couldn't necessarily provide the lunch any longer, they still were showing up and they're still asking lots of questions. And, there's a lot of value when you get developers bought into something and then they can share peer to peer, and it has a little more weight than when a Scrum Master or a leader or an Agile coach is telling the team that this is a great practice. When a developer can speak peer to peer, they can actually talk to, maybe they were cynical about it at first, but hey, you know what? We tried it out. We gave it a try. This was the experiment. Here are the results. This really works. So we get buy-in from that. So our outcome is, as far as the recordings, we're trying to eliminate or minimize our silos and our single points of failure, and we record those so that we can access them at any time. And there's less of a need for a lot of the cross-team work where we have to go pull someone from architects or pull someone who's on another team that's strong in back end or different things like that. And now we're also able to spread our knowledge across the teams and across, IT in general. One of our goals is to get to a point where we can expand it beyond IT and business over into the entire organization. So that's still a work in progress, but it's been really valuable. And I think a lot of people really get excited about the lunch and learn because it's just, there's always something new to learn.
Yeah, Mike, I want to share an observation and a question. The observation is, Mike, I think it was one of your sprint reviews where I was attending and your developer said, that we intentionally had non-Java developers pick up some Java PBIs because we wanted them to be more comfortable. So in my mind, the organization was valuing resilience over speed. Because if we were optimizing for speed, we would always get the fastest Java developer to always do all the Java work, the fastest database developer to do the database work. But then that Java developer gets a new job or falls sick or wins a lottery and you're screwed. But I thought it was so amazing that the CTO of the company is there, the the head of business is in the sprint review, and the team is feeling safe in sharing. We intentionally went slower in the short term, so we could, and the under the surface, there the subtext is so that we can be faster or better or more effective in the future. That was pretty cool. I have a question about group dynamics. So, Mike, before you joined, I had been trying to do this lunch and learn for 3 years. I couldn't make it work. And then in the beginning, when you started it, maybe to crank the flywheel, I don't know if it's a good analogy. In the beginning, maybe you or Scrum Masters were doing the presentation, but I felt there was maybe one or more series of tipping points at which this baby became adopted by the developer community. And they started proactively sharing, and you never had to beg or borrow or plead or cajole people. As you look back in time, can you see certain moments or incidents which caused this tipping point so that others can try to engineer those in their organization?
I think I honestly do think sometimes providing a lunch helps to get the ball rolling. And we started off with there were 3 of us. We started off with presentations that were our takeaways from the PSU course, Professional Scrum with UX. We wanted to show them the value in things like mock-ups and I forgot what the other 2 were right now, but that's the presentation we gave. So we were giving them some ideas on value and why this is better for our customer. Maybe that's a little harder for a developer to really buy into, but when we mixed it with having topics more closely related to their day-to-day work and then just rotated it, I think it all just sort of started gelling together and picking up a head of steam. And what's more impressive to me is the fact that once we did go to COVID and we weren't going to be able to provide the lunch each time, they still come on in a heavy presence across all the teams. I always look, just not for a bad reason, but I always look just to see the participation, and I see almost all of my team on there every time. So I just feel like they've bought into the value of this. They learn a lot of valuable practices, and we just hope that even when we pepper in our agility or Scrum practices or anything that's accompanying or complementary, that they keep up that high attendance, and then we can also work not just on skills but also on values and different things like that.
Very good. Thank you, Mike. 2 more questions, then we'll move on. One question is, who pays for the food? Again, this is a pre-COVID question, but back in the pre-COVID days, who used to pay for food?
I was able to expense it to my company.
All right.
I'm a contractor, so I was able to expense it.
Yeah, this is an interesting question because some of you may not know this. In America, there could be a lawsuit if a company buys pizza for a lunch and learn, because it's possible that if that lunch and learn is attended both by contractors and full-time employees, later on some contractor could file a lawsuit against the company saying, you treated me like an employee, but you denied me the benefits of an employee, so now I'm going to do a multi-million-dollar class action lawsuit. So something something that a company is trying to do as an act of kindness and love towards both contractors and non-contractors could be misused to harm the company. So at least from Smooth App's perspective, what we try and do whenever we are helping a client is, there are certain things that we can do to serve our client, and these are some of the things we do. We buy pizza. Mike has given DoorDash cards in the post-COVID era. His team was working hard on the weekend, and so Mike gave all of them DoorDash cards as a way to show them I care for you. I know this is hard. Thank you so much for caring for our company. All right. So that was one answer. The second question is, who decides who is best to teach the lunch and learn? Is it always the smartest person on the topic? Mike?
I wouldn't say that at all. Usually, let's say it's enterprise architects that want to share something. We've seen where they've gone to a newer version of a programming language and they see some differences and see some things that they think would benefit the developers. They'll have a lunch and learn on that. Or if it's, say, Adrian or myself will go to a new course and then we see some things that we really feel like would help the bank and help the team, individual team, but also maybe other teams. So a lot of times we'll collaborate and get a presentation together, and then we'll use that lunch and learn for an opportunity just to say, hey, this is something we saw. This is what we think if we tried this out, we think this would actually really help the teams. Sometimes it can be more of a something you want your team to buy in on, and then maybe you've tried it. I think that was our original format we were going for, is like, hey, we put this new practice in. This is what we tried. These are the results. We really think, this is of value to other teams too, if you want to try it out. So it's never really about like who the leader is. It's just about who has something they want to share. And that's why now our developers, we try to make it really simple too, because we don't want to scare people away thinking the presentation has to be amazing. We just want them to be able to come in and talk 5-10 minutes, or it doesn't even have to be a presentation. It could just be share your screen and show what you learned. So it's picked up that head of steam, and now it's, we have developers that want to present. We have, the architects, we have the Scrum Masters. It's whoever has something they want to share, they feel comfortable coming and doing it.
Yeah, I would say that it is the hungriest and most passionate person that presents. And that's what we want. In fact, I think one of the turning points may have been Adrian's team. They built in quality assurance, right? So my mentor, Mark Norman, said, he taught me the difference between quality assurance and quality control. And quality assurance is, let's not get better at fixing defects after they've been injected. Let's not even inject defects. So Adrian's team came up with a way, Adrian kind of guided his team to come up with a way to improve the peer review process. So we catch defects early. And there was a dramatic decrease in the defects and rework on Adrian's team, corresponding increase in reliability and throughput and improvement in cycle time. So 2 of Adrian's developers, I think, went to the lunch and learn. And I feel that one of them was so passionate. I think he was radiating infectious energy. And when other people saw it, they're like, man, I want to try whatever this guy had. I want to have that. I want to try it. And I think when you have passionate people who have respect among the community, that's a killer combination. So anyway, I think the best speaker, the community chooses the speaker, and there is no other committee who is deciding, are you smart enough to speak? The community speaks, community chooses the time, community chooses who shows up. So great question. Thank you so much. All right. As always, I talk too much. And I know, Mike, you need to run for a meeting to facilitate at the top of the hour, at 1 o'clock, whatever it is. So Mike, back to you. Okay. We can skip the questions and go directly to your content, please.
Okay. So the next one was having something take your team down for several days, like a DB restore or a security patch. So we had a security baseline patch, took our dev and QA environments down for 2 days, not just my team, all the Scrum teams. So there are things you can still do, like backlog refinement, but over a period of 2 days, that still ends up being some productivity loss. There is also still an occasional need for a DB restore, which also affects teams because there's everything you have to do to restore back to the way it was beforehand, like scripts and permissions, etc. So the loss of productivity, we had a pretty solid deadline that the teams were trying to meet for our go live launch. And so every second seemed to count. And when we would lose this time, it would be really frustrating because the devs really want to meet our goal. Everyone meets our goal, but then when there's not much you can do about it, it gets frustrating for them. So what we did, these were innocent mistakes, or, a DB restore just has to be done sometimes. But when a security baseline patch, for instance, takes down the teams, it wasn't intentional, but it's something that wasn't maybe considered or communicated well. And we have a scrum of scrums every morning, but at first, up to the point where we had this issue, we didn't have any visual representation in the scrum of scrums. We'd meet in person when we could before COVID, and then after COVID, we'd just get on a bridge. But what we ended up doing is I proposed the Confluence page that would show all the teams on a board, and we'd identify impediments, issues, dependencies. We'd look for planned production deployment pushes. It would identify if any outside teams like DBA, app admin, EA, if any of them were needed to help get that production push completed. And then we wanted to show future upcoming work from like the next few weeks, months, quarters. And then we're still working on a visual. We may put the roadmaps in. We're playing with a new function on Azure DevOps that shows some, I think you can stack different teams and have their roadmaps laid out. But with this visual, what it's done is it's given more talking points, and it gives people the opportunity to look and see what it is that's coming and how their work may impact others. So that was specific to the DB or that for the security patch that impacted everyone. But I also for our DB restores, I requested a post restore script be made by one of the third-party vendors that we work with, so that once our DB restore was done, then part of the entire process was this script would automatically run and restore permissions for all the developers and all the business people. So then we also asked the team to create a story that outlined all the steps for a DB restore, what needed to happen to recover from that. And that would help us have visibility on, hey, how do we recover from this faster? So our results is now we're able to see things more and visualize how our work impacts others. The teams work more in harmony. There are better conversations we have now. We haven't had an incident like that security baseline patch. We haven't had it again since this board started, which it may not just be completely about that, but I think there's a lot more conversation about when is the best time to do this, who else might we impact if we do it at this time. And then as a bonus, this board, I mentioned a 3-team consecutive launch on a weekend. We use this board as a launching pad for lining up the steps for production pushes, like who needs to push when, what's the logical order that these production pushes need to happen in, what are the tasks. So we started on a Saturday morning and each team was on, and we just executed this list down and almost flawlessly. There was some testing that needed to go over into the next day, but as far as just the execution, we were able to have 2 teams done and off, and then 1 team with the remaining work continue the next day. But I think without that, it would have taken us probably a couple of days, if not two or 3. And now the DB restores with that script and with the steps written down, we went from 2 or 3 days to within a business day of being able to recover after a DB restore.
Pretty cool. And this is an example of a change that originated in response to a specific issue in Mike's team. But now, because Mike and Adrian supported each other, this has become a change that has radiated to the entire company. And it's amazing to see something that started so small to create a small amount of good. And now pretty much that's the way the whole company is creating transparency, inspection, and adaptation in terms of cross-team and cross-product dependencies. All right, Mike, back to you.
Okay. So the 5th challenge, you've gotten close to production completion release, and you've got to prepare for the go live efforts. This kind of goes back a little bit to what I just covered. We were using dark prod, so this was more a scenario for us. It may not apply to everyone, but we needed to figure out what's the best way to do this to not have to do it every time. So our go live launch wouldn't happen frequently. This was a very unique project, but the bank will continue working on projects. There will be releases that they need to do, whether they're in dark prod or switch from dark prod to live, or just releasing into production. It's possible to overlook items, and it's time consuming to continue putting this list together per team, per product launch. So what we wanted to do is one of our teams launched before we did. So we asked if they would give us sort of a lessons learned, just observations, different things we could use. And once they did that, we started in Excel to put together a playbook, and now it's evolving to Confluence. So what we'll do is make it such that teams don't have to go digging for documents. They have a living, breathing item on our Agile page within Confluence that they can go to when it's time for go live. And it's generic such that, not everything that we learned is going to apply to other teams, but there's a lot of things that are common for a lot of us. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't dig for the documents, and it makes it faster, at least for people to think through all the things that they need to talk about. Some of those things are, who does this affect? Who uses this product, and what changes need to be communicated to them? What's their impact? What are the steps we need to take for the deployment, the tasks? What are the rollout steps? Who do we have that needs to be on call? Who is going to handle each task, and what's their expected time frame that they need to be available? So now what happens for us is we consider all these people and we think about what it takes to get there. It makes it faster for everyone to use this blueprint and to not reinvent the wheel, not spend that extra time. That's sort of waste. If you have to do the same thing again anyway, why continue to do it from scratch each time? So that's really, we're hoping, because we haven't had a go live since we've implemented this, but I imagine it's going to speed up the go live process, at least the planning portion of it for all the teams across the board.
Cool. There's a question for release planning. Do you proactively identify or tag specific stories, features in advance for a production deployment and track them if they couldn't make it to production and move on to the next release? Since we are short of time, I'll give a brief answer, and then so Mike can cover the remaining material. So this we have support from the CIO of the company that we should have zero inventory carry over from sprint to sprint, which means the goal is every single product backlog item in every single sprint should be deployed to production. So that is the goal. So the intent is we try not to have a big batch production deployment at the end. And any story that is not gone to production, it is considered as work. It doesn't meet the definition of done. It doesn't get closed out, and by default, it is captured as something that gets carried over. And it's not something that the organization appreciates or encourages. So that is a retrospective item to say, how can we stop doing this? All right, Mike, back to you.
So another challenge that we've had is how we can better enable self-organization on the team. We've gone through multiple sprints, where the team is not self-organizing, and this ties into the PSK practices. We've coached, several times, and it's just not taking place like it should be. So team would work in silos. We wouldn't meet sprint goals and forecasts. Our reviews, we would have a forecast for that and show up with less value than what the stakeholders were expecting, which would be a blind side for them. So what we did is I took, Management 3.0, I took the PAL-E, and one of the things that they talked about was the delegation levels. And as I mentioned before, we have mature leaders in the bank. So we worked with our Agile coach, and we came up with a plan to set enabling constraints like we talked about in PSK. We explained why there was a need to do this with the team. We use delegation 2, which I'll show you on the next slide what the delegation levels are if you're not familiar with that. But we use level 2, which is I will try and sell it to them. It's not necessarily giving them the choice of how we're going to work, but it's saying, this is why we're doing this, and trying to get buy-in. But at the end of the day, even if there's not buy-in, then like, hey, I'm going to ask you to disagree and commit, and let's try this and see how it works. And it resulted in lower cycle time. So it's kind of hard to argue against that. And the new method of work, we prescribed it. We said, hey, we're going to try this for a certain amount of time. We're going to see if our hypothesis is right. And so what it did is it lowered us from, what had been at the early stages of when I got to the team, triple digit cycle time. It got us down to somewhere between 6 and 8, 6 and 7 cycle time of, we were counting even not just prod ready or done. We were counting from start to closed in production, in dark prod for a while, but now in production. We were delivering more value in proportion to where we were in the sprint. If we were 50% through the sprint, we want 50% value. It gives us more flexibility to adjust the forecast on the sprint now, based on the inspection points and the different tools we're using. And it was able to create a flow of value by trusting our leaders to guide us in the way we should go. And if you're not familiar with the delegation levels, this is what they teach in Management 3.0 and the Professional Agile Leadership Essentials. Level 1 is basically, I'm telling you, and I don't need feedback. I just want you to do what I'm telling you to do. 2 is sell. I'll try to sell it to you, but and I'll see if I can get your buy-in, but I still need you to do it. Consult. I will consult, and then I'll decide based on whatever feedback you give me how you're going to do this. And then you start kind of changing. Level 4, agree. All right, we're going to come together and we'll hash this out. We'll come out with an agreement. Advise. I'm going to advise you, and I'll let you decide, but I want you to at least hear what I have to say first. Inquire. I will inquire after they decide. Hey, what did you decide on? I'd like to know this information. And then level 7 is, I trust this team so much, I don't even need the information. I just, whatever they decide to do, I trust them with that.
All right, very good. There's a question about Management 3.0. So Management 3.0, if you want to Google Management 3.0 and delegation poker, there is a nice free video by Jürgen Appelo, the creator of Management 3.0, that can tell you more. On the Scrum.org YouTube channel, there is also a 60-minute webinar by Ralph Jochum on how to integrate Management 3.0 into Scrum. So Alberto, I hope that helps. And Alberto, you and I are connected on LinkedIn. So if you have follow-up questions on Management 3.0, please shoot Mike or I a question. We'd love to help you. All right, friends, with that, we've come to the end of this session. Maybe there's time for one last question for Mike before he runs to facilitate his next event. So any questions for Mike? Okay, I can see Prashad is typing a question. How to engage the team? How to engage the team? All right, Prashad, can you say more? How to engage the team in what? When the engagement is lacking. Maybe a 1-minute answer, Mike. What has worked for you in boosting team engagement when they are disengaged?
Well, I think there's 2 ways. One is to try to show the value of the way we're working in the group, but we also maintain on our teams one-on-ones. And so I go on one-on-one basis and speaking to team members that if I feel like from our interactions, if this person is sort of disengaged, then that's when I can use my coaching opportunity to ask, what is it that's keeping you disengaged? And then I've done coactive coaching where it's saying that the people already have the answer. They just need to get to it. So I do more question asking just to find out, hey, what's keeping you disengaged and what can we do? If that's how you feel, or if that's the situation, what can you do? What have you already tried? But it can be complicated because sometimes you can get across to the team in a group setting, but sometimes it takes going and having a one-on-one to actually maybe sway a mind or to get someone's buy-in at an individual level so that it can affect the rest of the team.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Mike. So yeah, some resources, coactive coaching. That could be a good course for you to attend. There is a 60-minute webinar on the Scrum.org YouTube channel that I gave on how to boost motivation for Scrum teams. And there is a short video by Dan Pink. If you Google on purpose, autonomy, mastery, or go to YouTube and do a search on Dan Pink, purpose, autonomy, mastery, there might be a short free video you can use to boost motivation and engagement. So I hope that was useful. Lots of appreciation messages for you, Mike. Thank you so much for your knowledge, your experience, very helpful. Thank you everybody for joining. I hope this was useful. Hope to see you again. Stay safe. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. See you next year. Mike, thank you. Everyone, thank you. Keep calm and Scrum on.
Thank you all.
Thank you.